Presidency spokesperson Khusela Diko joins me on the line now. Ms. Diko, thank you very much for your time. The Presidency's reaction to this tweet by the U.S. President Donald Trump, please.
Well, good morning, Lotwalo. Good morning to the eNCA viewers, and thank you so much for inviting us. The Presidency has noted the tweet which is attributed to the U.S. President, President Donald Trump. In our view, the tweet is unfortunate and misinformed. However, we've chosen not to respond to it via social media. Instead, we'll use the diplomatic channels that exist for such purposes. So the Presidency has asked the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation to seek clarification from the U.S. Embassy on what these tweets mean and obviously what their intention is as well.
The President, Khusela, has, the U.S. President that is, he says he has asked his Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, to look closely or study closely at the whole issue of land expropriation without compensation in South Africa. Is the South African government in conversation with the U.S. government and taking them through about the processes that are unfolding relating to land?
Well, without seeking to respond to President Trump, I'm happy to engage on the processes that South African government is taking around the land reform process. What South Africans are doing is grappling with and trying to find one another on a very emotive land question. And as these conversations, there'll obviously be, as these conversations unfold, there'll obviously be a lot of interest that comes from the international community as it relates to how we're handling this matter. As South Africans, we have experienced through, bringing about our democratic dispensation, where we'll engage on difficult issues, seek consensus, and then do everything we need to do within the rule of the law. And this process is not going to be any different. We have noted, obviously, that there are some amongst us, our South African community, who will seek a divisive approach, who will seek to polarize South Africans on the land reform process. And this is where we need to ensure that we strengthen our engagement and we speak to everybody that needs to be spoken to, so that by the time Parliament concludes its processes in the latter part of this year, we have come up with a solution that is uniquely South African, that has been developed by the people of South Africa in their interest. So we'll engage the international community, we'll speak to the investor community, we'll speak to the landowners and the landholders. The President said yesterday that for us to ensure development and stability in South Africa, we need to embrace transformation, and that is the point at which we are going to be approaching this discussion.
Khusela, you speak about speaking to the investor community. The AfriForum, the lobby group here, has already beaten you to that. They've been to the U.S. They were there in May this year on a campaign to, quote-unquote, warn investors around land expropriation without compensation. How is South Africa's, the South African government's relationship with that of the U.S. at this moment in time?
Well, South Africa enjoys a strong bilateral relationships with the United States, and it's for this reason that we have chosen not to respond to a tweet, but instead to seek engagement with the government of the United States of America. In fact, in October of this year, we will be hosting Secretary Pompeo, who are on a long-standing visit to South Africa and the various other African countries. So the relationships are solid. As it relates to what is being done by AfriForum, we don't see this as a race to the bottom who can shout the loudest on these matters. As South Africans, we need to ensure that we utilize our constitutional framework, which provides, as the President said, it currently provides for an accelerated land reform process, and we need to agree as South Africans on the modalities to do this. We do not have the latitude of choice when it comes to land reform. And if indeed we are going to grow our economy and we are going to develop and transform our economy in the manner that we want, these are the difficult conversations that we're going to have. The President is on record having said that there are a number of business people, there are a number of people from the investor community, including the likes of AgriSA, who have come forward and said, we don't share the divisive view that AfriForum is perpetuating throughout the world. We as Africans, we are here to stay in this country, and we realize the necessity for us to engage in land reform and ensure that this is a matter that Africans deal with and they put aside. So we are not perturbed by the fact that AfriForum is going around, but it is noise that the country really doesn't need at this point. We need to put all hands on deck and ensure that we approach this in a constructive manner in the interest of all the people of South Africa.
Khusela, it's hard not to link this directly to the President of the U.S. This was his personal tweet. We all know that he tweets in his personal capacity. This was him apparently reacting to a news report he had seen. In that tweet, Khusela, he talks about land seizures that are being carried out by the South African government and, add to that, farm killings. In your view, is the U.S. President misinformed about the processes that are ongoing in this country around land?
Only you and I live in South Africa. I think that we are quite aware of the situation in South Africa, and as far as I know, there is no program of the South African government for land seizures. I think part of the reports that Fox News was driving goes so far as to say that President Ramaphosa has instructed government to begin seizing farms and the like. There is absolutely no truth to those particular statements. When it comes to the issue of farm killing, I think we must appreciate that in South Africa we do have a serious problem of crime. It is not only white farmers who get killed in this country. It is people from all walks of life in a number of manners. So it's wrong to link that with a program of government around land reform. But I think that these are the misconceptions that exist out there, and our responsibility is to ensure that we seek to clarify them and we continue to talk. We continue to talk in order to get to the solution that we need to at the end of the day. So misinformed views, they exist, not only, I think, in the international community, even amongst ourselves, and it's only through dialogue and negotiation that we are going to come to a solution.
Khusela, if the U.S. President is so easily swayed by news reports, whatever news channel he chooses to watch, I want you to give some thought to this. A U.S. think tank called the Cato Institute has published an article where they are calling on Trump's administration to act against South Africa by possibly removing it from the AGOA trade deal. When last did President Ramaphosa have a conversation with Donald Trump, if at all?
You're really trying very hard to get me to respond to President Trump, and it would be really improper to do so. So I would not want us to do it. In the same vein that you have, institutes like the Cato, I think it was called the think tank of the U.S. In some reports.
That's right.
In the same way, they have those particular views. Let's not discount the views, for example, of Agri-SA, who come out and say that this is how this can be done. It's an emotive issue. It's an emotive issue, and being an emotive issue, you have very divergent views on both sides of the spectrum. When he was responding to questions in Parliament yesterday, the President said, yes, indeed, we are aware that the landowners want certainty on the issues around land reform. But equally, those who yearn for land, they want as much certainty too. So these are the two views that exist on both sides of the spectrum. And what we need to do is to try and find a middle ground based on what our Constitution allows us to do, based on the rule of law, and based on the imperative to advance development. So that is where we are. And the process that the Parliament has embarked on is bringing us some way to get to that resolution. We're hoping by the end of the year its recommendations are going to be out. We've heard the views of various political parties, including the governing party, as to how they think that the matter must be resolved. So we must engage on it, not with a view that seems to think that land reform may be postponed or delayed, because that we have passed that point now. What we are talking about is the modalities, what, how, and how quickly are we able to advance land reform.
Just as a final question to you, Khusela, we're wrapping up very quickly now. How are you going to dissuade organizations like AfriForum from their campaigns? They, like I said to you before, they've already been to the US. They actually visited this very Cato Institute that today is calling on Trump to relook at South Africa's participation in AGOA. What are you going to do to counter such campaigns?
Well, it's not for government to seek to counter the views, the very divisive views if I can put it like that, that AfriForum has. The people of South Africa are making their views known. They have put in submissions to the parliamentary processes. They're speaking on all types of forums, including social media, mainstream media, and everywhere else. And when the moment comes, those are the views that will be collated in order to come up with a position that government is going to be able to take forward. So everybody must be spoken to. I think there was a lot of criticism when the president went to address the centenary anniversary of the Buddha Bond, the Afrikaner Bond. And at that particular meeting, the president made the point very clear that those institutions that had sought to be instruments of division and hatred amongst the South African population must now form part of building a new South Africa where they become instruments of unity and transformation. And this is the message that we're carrying out. We're calling on all South Africans to engage on the land debate, as difficult as it is, like our constitutional negotiations were difficult. But it is matters that we must confront in order to be able to move the country forward.
Khusela Diko, thank you very much for your time. She speaks on behalf of President Cyril Ramaphosa. We'll continue.